Welcome to Psyche Magic, a podcast about self-discovery and the subconscious, where we explore the symbolic language of dreams, tarot, and archetypes. I'm your host, Jordan Hale. I'm a psychotherapist based in Nashville, Tennessee. Each episode, I'll hold a casual conversation with various artists and healers about their shadow work practices. We pull tarot cards, unpack a significant dream or dream theme, and discuss their personal healing arts practices. So please grab a cup of something delicious and stay a while. While aspects of this podcast may feel therapeutic, it is never meant to take the place of therapy. Welcome back to Psyche Magic. Have you ever been curious about the concept of ego death or heard it mentioned in wellness or healing circles? Many of us hear the word ego and immediately associate a self-absorbed and or negative connotation with the word. But when we speak about ego death from a healing or shadow work perspective, we're referring to the ego in terms of the original conceptualization from the fathers of psychotherapy, such as Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, who understood the ego to be the mask we wear in terms of our self-concept and the representation of the stories we tell about who we are and the roles we play daily as humans. In this context, when we speak of ego death as a result of powerful psychedelic experiences, what we mean is that this mask and the limitations that come with it temporarily fall away, allowing us to access the expansiveness of who we are as interconnected spiritual beings who are having a human experience. This can have lasting positive impacts on our mental health and well-being. And as a clinician, I am so encouraged that these, in many cases, ancient and indigenous healing modalities are gaining traction and legitimacy in terms of their therapeutic potential in our Western society. And speaking of transformation, after a season of hibernation and quiet reflection, not to mention deep postpartum healing and rebirth, I can feel the surge of new ideas and reimaginings stirring within me about the future of this project. And let me just say, I am so excited and delighted by all the places we will go together. For now, I'll give you a few brief announcements about what's coming up in the immediate future, and then we will get into the episode because it is a wild psychedelic ride, y'all, and you are going to love it. Okay, first up is what we're doing on Substack with our new series, Spell Work for the Subconscious. This is perfect for those looking for practical ways to integrate a little more magic and ritual into their journaling and shadow work practices. Twice a month around the full and new moons, I will choose a different reader-selected dream symbol to interpret, and for just $5 a month or $50 a year, paid subscribers will receive journaling prompts, a guided meditation, and a custom ritual to work with each symbol's meaning more deeply and integrate it more personally. So far, we've unpacked the snake, water, and babies as dream symbols, and we are building this fabulous library for you all piece by piece. So if you're looking for guidance on any of those symbols, look no further than psychemagic.substack.com. And if you have a dream symbol you're itching for me to tackle, drop us a line or a DM and we will add it to the list. We also have a spellbinding collaborative event on the horizon, the Summer Solstice Summit, a virtual tarot conference hosted by my dear friend Shannon Knight of the Tarot Diagnosis. This will take place over the weekend of June 20th through 22nd, 2025, and will be a weekend of magical nourishment with presentations on topics such as shadow work and archetypes, intuitive and symbolic tarot, astrology and cosmic influence, and seasonal and solstice magic and ritual guidance. I myself will be leading a discussion about working therapeutically with the elements, aka earth, fire, air, and water. I am counting down the days and I hope that you will join us. Tickets are available at thetarotdiagnosis.com. Lastly, I want to give a special shout out and congratulations to our longtime editor, Miss Suzu Tardino, who just became a mom, welcoming her beautiful baby girl Tifa into the world. We love you, Miss Suzu, and we are collectively sending you joy, peace, health, and healing in this early chapter of motherhood. Okay, I think that's all of the announcements for now. My guest today is the introspective detective and author AJ Murillo, whose most recent book, The Beginner's Guide to Ego Death, is the subject of our discussion today. We unpack the powerful impact psychedelics such as psilocybin, LSD, and ayahuasca can have on our ability to enhance and deepen our shadow work practices. And we share some powerful personal stories about how psychedelics helped each of us confirm our life paths and partner choices. We also touch on lucid dreaming, past life regression, and angel numbers as synchronistic forms of interconnection and meaning making. So without further ado, let's get into the interview with AJ Murillo. AJ Murillo, welcome to Psyche Magic. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay!
Just the idea that I'm relevant at this point, because a lot of this is my philosophy, my understanding, and my reality that I'm trying to help others with. So this is where I am now. It's so exciting, and I feel super blessed to even be here.
Oh, I love hearing that, AJ. I am such a strong proponent of just having guests that have a really poignant, like profound message to share that they care a lot about. Like those are the kinds of guests I want to have. And just from our brief conversation so far, I can already feel that that's who you are. So grateful to you and so excited to just learn more about everything that you have absorbed that we can learn from you in your psychedelic journeys. Yes, I think it's going to be a wealth of wisdom and I'm so excited. So just a brief little intro of just who you are and what you do so that the listeners can have a little grounding, a little context around you, please, if you would.
Of course. Well, I'm very, very humble at this point. Say I'm an introspective detective.
I love that.
A person who has really in depth understood and has tried so hard to understand the mind based off of my experiences. And my past, I've always wanted to become a writer. And somehow throughout my journey, these have intertwined and merged into one. And naturally, I've become a philosopher mixed with a writer. And what I'm sharing with everyone is just the journey of how to navigate towards what ego death really is and how to really take control over your world and your reality and your sense of self. And this has been a journey that I didn't really act for. I didn't, this is just my path and my purpose. So I really do see myself as I'm just a regular human, just sharing a message that the universe has told me to. That's how I see myself.
I love that so much, AJ. Yes, because you're giving voice to, there's this sort of mission, there's this guidance, there's this connection that I want to share, and just a regular person. Like both of those things can be true. I love that. And I love introspective detective. I think that's fabulous. Great. Oh, yeah. Okay. So we're going to pull our tarot card, AJ. Now, I would love to hear from you. Are you a tarot person? Do you like tarot? Do you engage with tarot? Like, what's your relationship with tarot so far while I shuffle?
It's funny. I have my own deck of tarot cards, and this was a huge portion of my world before I became a mother. Now that I'm a mom, I have twins. My children have taken over these cards. So it's something that I haven't become an expert in. I'm not, I was learning and they took over and now it's their world. So
wait, I love that so much. That's so cute. Okay. How old are your twins? I'm a new mom as well.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
They're 2.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Wow. So yeah, I feel like you're in like the fun part now. What do you think about that?
If that's what you'd like to call it, sure. They are funny. They are hilarious. They're amazing, beautiful. But I am outrageously exhausted.
Okay. And they're twins, AJ. I mean,
yeah.
Double trouble.
Can you imagine?
Like
Hmm.
double your fun. I literally
One
cannot.
boy, one girl too. So two different worlds.
Oh my goodness. I cannot imagine because honestly, one is enough for me.
So how old is your baby?
So Iris is now almost 9 months old. So we're still, getting into our relationship and getting to know each other now that she's getting more conscious.
Beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. It's so beautiful to watch.
We're entering a really nice little chapter right now where like the communication is starting in like a very rudimentary way. And it's just feeling like, okay, we're getting somewhere.
Enjoy
Yay.
as much as you possibly can. This moment, they do grow, of course. Like the
Yes.
same thing with mine, but it's so beautiful watching them become conscious and conscious of your relationship. It's so beautiful. I love it so much.
Oh, it's
Probably the best part of motherhood.
incredible. Yes. Oh, that makes so much sense. Well, and I love that you said that yours gravitate towards tarot. Like, I'm sure that those images are just very exciting for them. I think that's so fun.
Oh yeah. It's so strange how natural it is for them.
Right? Isn't that interesting? I know. Okay, I'm going to show you the card that we found, and I'm going to describe it to the listeners for those who might not be familiar. So, we got the Two of Swords. For listeners, this is a figure who is holding two swords crossed in front of their body, and they're wearing a blindfold, and they're in this very gorgeous, kind of stark, beachy, oceanic landscape. And there's a moon just hanging, a little sliver of a moon hanging above their head that we can see. So, Two of Swords. AJ, just hot take, quick take. What does this do for you? What comes up?
Honestly, I'm waiting for you to explain it to me even deeper because my idea of what I'm experiencing, naturally, it just looks like what I'm experiencing in life, but I would have to go deeply into how my level of consciousness and my physical self are in two different worlds and they're slowly merging into one right now.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult for my physical self, AJ, to accept a lot of the changes that are happening and not in a negative way. It's a lot of positivity going on in my world right now.
Yeah.
But they're used to as I was raised, everything that I was, how I grew up, my entire journey before this all began, it was a lot of negativity, a lot of pain, trauma. And my world is shifting into something so new. And it's a lot for my past self to take on and accept that, mentally nourished person, you're a well-loved person. There's a lot of love in my world.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. That's just all I'm going through. I spoke about this all morning with my husband and just learning that I need to accept who my inner self is. And I'm all becoming one right now. And so I'm not really sure.
Right.
But I do know that that's what I'm going through. And I'm really excited to understand if this is related to this card, if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely. Well, because what I find so powerful about tarot is that you're saying that this image alone sparks something for you that feels like it reflects part of your internal world right now, right? And sometimes it is hard to put, words and make logical sense out of that experience. But I always tell folks that, like, if you're doing a tarot reading and there's some deep part of you that feels seen, even if you can't quite articulate it, it means that you're getting somewhere, right? It means that, like, tarot's doing its job and that alignment is there.
Right.
What I'll say about this card in terms of sort of the classical associations with it is that the swords are a suit of the mind. So when we think about the sword, it has this double edge. It has the light and the dark. It has the positive and the negative. And so our minds tend to make everything into these sort of duality concepts, right? They tend to make everything black or white. And so in this card, this person is sort of weighing the actual heaviness or the weight, or in some senses, like the burden of a couple of different mental patterns or a couple of different choices in their world, right? But there's this sense that they're trying to weigh it using another part of their experience than just their usual two eyes, right? Like this figure is blindfolded for a reason. They're trying to be led from another place than their typical, to use one of your terms, more sort of ego-based consciousness. They're looking to be led and guided from someplace deeper, or perhaps someplace more expansive. So I tend to read this card as trying to break this old pattern of making everything black and white and instead trying to be led into a more expansive place. But that always requires taking a leap of faith.
Absolutely.
And binding that old way. So I don't know if that resonates for you, but that is always what this card does for me. It reminds me that, like, oh, there are other decision-making processes that I can engage. And, whenever I see water in cards, I'm always drawn back into, like, this card is reminding me to go with my sort of emotional flow and wisdom that comes from that place rather than just my mind. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. Any other thoughts based on that additional context? Just curious.
I mean, extremely helpful.
Good.
Just to be clear about what I'm going through, I mean, it's pretty spot on.
Sure.
Because when I say consciousness, I don't mean just my attention or my awareness. I mean my levels of understanding and my personal reality. So it's the same exact concept. But when you say decision making, that's pretty much what I'm experiencing, what I'm going through. Dealing with motherhood has really changed my perception of self, and not just how I feel about myself, but how I make decisions and choices and what I strive for in life is really completely different than who I used to be. And so it is really difficult to, I'm constantly balancing and instead of balancing really, evenly, it's like a really rigid experience because I'm constantly trying to think for my children. I care for my children almost more than I care for myself at some point. So it's really difficult to understand how to balance myself and myself as a mother. And who I'm becoming is all one big picture. And I think that that's what I'm trying to compensate, how to use this information, not only for myself, but how to live my life, how to raise my children, how to help others. It's all one really big picture. And that's really difficult for me to be human, deal with my own emotions, deal with my own, changes in life. There's so many categories open in my life right now. And I'm trying really hard to understand how to balance it all. And I'm doing well, but it is a bit overwhelming. And as you say, black and white, it is difficult for me to go between what needs to be done as a mom. Everything is black and white. This is what needs to be done. And then there are other parts where I need to flow with my thoughts and communicate really easily with the universe. And it's a lot.
Makes so much sense. Oh my gosh. Yeah. As someone who is also navigating the way that as you step into this like portal of motherhood and responsibility for this little being, it's true. All of your internal processes change. I mean, they must change, right?
Exactly.
It's not just me anymore.
Right.
I'm responsible for this little life. And it's my job to speak for her at this point in her journey and protect her. And it's a lot to hold. So yes, I think this card is reminding us that we can tune in to that guidance as much and as often as needed. But there's this kind of unlearning, right, in terms of like the old way of the sort of logical side. Beautiful. I always do this when I do the show. I like to like prop the card up so I could see it visually during our conversation because sometimes other little messages come through. So we like to just keep it visually there. Okay. Let's transition, AJ. Let's talk about the dream that you brought because I thought it was fascinating. Just give us a little synopsis of it, if you would. It sounds like it was not a typical dream. It was almost more of like a form of lucid dreaming, astral travel kind of situation. So just walk us through what you experienced and then we'll kind of unpack it a little bit to the extent that we feel like it's fun.
I almost felt bad about it because I was like, based off of your path of what you usually love to talk about, dream. I was thinking, this is where my journey began, but this was definitely closer to a lucid dream, and it wasn't a very emotional impact or a subconscious dream.
Sure.
So thank you for even accepting, but this was really important to really understand where the beginning of my world, who I really am, and versus who I've become based off of my circumstances and how I was raised. Those are two different people.
Absolutely.
Back then, I didn't really understand anything about myself spiritually. And my life was almost aimless at that point. I was highly depressed. And it was also a lot of strange things going on too. Before that dream, it did seem like the universe was really poking at me to wake up. There were a lot of strange things happening. I do talk about this often. I think I even wrote about it at one point where I was walking by a park and it seemed like a flock of, or a group of butterflies were swarming around me. And following me. I think it must have been like 15 butterflies. I
Oh
mean,
my
I've never even
God.
seen that many butterflies together before. And that same day, I hopped on the train. A little boy stopped me and asked me to, he was playing a few games on a calculator. And every calculation that he did turned out to be the number 333333333. And it was so strange that, I'm looking at him and I can feel something, but at the same time, I'm thinking I have to go to work, yada, 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 yada. But there's a voice inside my mind that's like, what is this? What's happening here?
Yeah.
And throughout that week, things kept happening in that manner. And the end of that week, that's when I had this dream. It's almost like the lucid dream didn't exactly start yet because I was in a car with my grandparents,
Yeah.
which I have no relationship with. I don't know them.
Oh.
I found that to be a bit strange. And we were going up a mountain, and there were about four spaceships twirling around, and it seemed like there was like some sort of war going on. And I blacked out. And when I opened my eyes again in this lucid version of the dream, I walked into a dark, it seemed like a really like a conference room, I guess, really dark conference room where there were suited men that seemed to be security. And they were, they seemed to be real people because they were acknowledging everyone that was walking through the door. It was very strange. And I'm looking around. And by the way, I've never had a lucid dream before. I did practice years later after, but before this, I didn't know anything about lucid dreaming or things like that. Although I did have some strange dreams like this before, but this one, I've never encountered people that, usually in a dream, people seem almost lifeless in my world, I guess.
Sure.
But these people seemed very real. Like I was in their dream even, And there's a small group of people, I would say about 20 people all collecting inside this room. And I'm blacking in and out because I'm looking at my hands. I'm wondering where I am. I'm wondering who these people are. So I'm not really exactly fully conscious until I hear this man next to me yelling really loudly, looking at a screen. And it's explained this new system that the government has created. And this new system I think they've depleted the idea of even money. Everything was based off of like this point system that we would have. By the way, this is 2014. I should have mentioned that.
Okay.
That's important because a lot of what I'm explaining is actually happening.
Yeah.
Especially in China. He's describing, he's really enthusiastic. He's so excited about it. And he's the only one who seems enthusiastic. Everyone is very curious and a little suspicious about, I guess it seems like everyone's suspicious about this dream. Everyone seems to be in the same dream, but very confused.
Everyone's having the same feeling of kind of lucidity, and I'm trying to make sense of where I am and what's happening. Yeah.
Exactly. Except for this one individual he sees his name and he's explaining that our point system starts off, I believe, at like 5,000 points or something. I'm not really sure. I don't really remember too vividly, but we all started fresh. So if you had debt before, if you had any sort of convictions, you start fresh. You're a completely brand new human. And I was really concerned, and they came over you can tell I'm a little nervous. So these suited men came over to me and asked if I was okay. Everything's fine. They handed me some drink and I dismissed and rejected. And once they did that, they started to look at me a little funny. And what I thought was, are they aware that I'm aware, or like, what is this? And that's when I decided to leave. When I did leave, there were these mazes of walls, just walls, and lines, and like endless lines of people everywhere. And I was very curious. Everyone, by the way, is very, I'm not sure, but like as if they're stuck on their phone, just spaced out pretty much. So they don't really notice me. They're not really recognizing that I'm even walking by. So no one's thinking I'm cutting the line or anything. So I'm walking through and there's just doorways. There's just white walls, I'm not sure exactly how to describe this. It's better than that, but they're just walls and doors, maze, wall and door. That's the best I can describe. And as I walk a little too deep in, I think about 4 walls in, a man approaches me and he's just telling me, get far away from this. And, I'm asking him like, away from this line. And he says, the future, get away from this. And I back up out of it. And then he's there again on the outside. And he just looks at me and once again, just far away from this. And back then I didn't understand anything that was going on. And as years went by and my journey began, understanding myself, my levels of consciousness, the ego death, everything, things did start to align and things did start to make sense. And I did eventually, my world did shift and that dream did help me. But it still is a very, very strange of how these stories tend to sound like stories, but they do sound like someone is entering my mind and communicating with me in ways
Yeah.
that tend to not make sense to other people, but this seems to be normal for me. But that's about it.
Well, and you said that at the time, this type of dream was a new experience for you,
Yeah,
right? Relatively so, that there was this sense of, I'm picking up on something here, right? Like there's a message that's being
right.
received. And it sounds like, I mean, because you had this dream about 12 years ago, right? Close enough. And it sounds like this dream has been working on you for a very long time. So I'm curious to hear, I want to know a little bit more about like how you make sense of this dream from this point in retrospect, right? And then we can talk a little bit
Yeah,
more about kind of the details of the dream and the interesting points about lucidity. But I'm so curious as to what your take on this dream is now from this
right.
vantage point.
Understanding who I was and that I had a purpose and a journey, I really did need to stay intact with myself, with my high conscious self. I could see that being stuck in this technological world, it would almost be impossible to do so. And I needed to have control over my path and where I was going, and which is how I ended up here in Ecuador, by the way.
Yeah.
I needed a way to process my journey myself, if that makes
Hmm.
any sense, because I can see where I was heading before when I told you I was living a really aimless life. That aimless life mixed with that high tech world would keep my vibrations very low.
I
I
see.
wouldn't be able to understand my high conscious self or live that life that I was meant to. I wouldn't understand the concept of the psyche and explain
Hmm.
any of these understandings. And when it came to the lines, though, I think the lines were indicating when things were shifting and changing, and that was around the COVID time. That was around, well, this all started around 2019, ironically, but 2020 was when I realized, okay, this must be what they were talking about. This is the time where you actually get out of here.
Yeah, this was a
Yeah,
big shift for a lot of people. And
right.
what you're saying is for you, it clicked that I need a completely different type of environment
Exactly.
in order to meet my soul's purpose. And that environment is one that is not characterized by sort of worshiping technological advancement. It's characterized by something else.
Definitely. It's a really spiritual experience. And I think that collectively we were all heading towards the same direction, which is why I believe things shifted and changed around that time.
Yeah.
2019, there were a lot of things changing just with the people that were around, even people who weren't very close to. Understanding who I was during my journey, and I was connecting to many people. People were connecting to me as well in ways that, years before would have been considered strange to me. So I can feel the levels of consciousness shifting and elevating as a collective. So it seems that this was just the journey that we were all on.
Mm.
And this is whatever happened. So I think that that was the same time I understood who I was. I became really aware of my high level of consciousness and decided in order to, stay like really strong connected to who I really am, I
Yeah.
need peace and quiet. I need to get out of, I was living in New York City. Can you
I
imagine it?
know. I know.
Just chaotic, and
Yes.
it was dramatic and very, very exhausting. And so I live here in the mountains, and it's so much more easier for me to stay connected with who I am. And this is where I wrote the book, and I hope I'm answering your question.
You are. You are. Well, because you're putting it in context, because what I feel like the thing that I'm obsessed with talking about is that our dreams are, in so many ways, they're allowing us, you talk about this in the book too, they're allowing us to access the different parts of our consciousness. And so for you, you were tuning into this wisdom and understanding that you already had. It's not that someone was bestowing this upon you necessarily, it's that you were accessing something that you already knew, which was that I need a completely different
Right.
environment in order to live into my purpose. And the dream worked on you for several years before you were able to execute that. And I think that sometimes we fall into this trap, in our modern society of wanting immediate results and immediate answers. And if I can't work with this dream right now, then it doesn't matter. And the truth is, the
Right.
biggest, most significant dreams sometimes work on us for years and years and years before we can look back and say, oh, that's what that dream was showing me. So I love that you put it in context of your sort of larger journey. And I think that's just really helpful to hear.
This dream actually, it never left me, by the way. I mean,
Yeah,
it was so
yeah,
powerful and so
yeah,
impactful that, I really, a lot of my life was changing,
yeah.
around that same time. So it did really impact how my mind ended up. I was also, sorry to, it seems like I'm redirecting the conversation, but I was
Not at
also
all.
raised by narcissists.
Uh,
And being raised by narcissists really impacts my sense of self and how I experience my
yes.
own self and how I treat myself. So around that time, I was learning how to, I guess, love myself in a
Yeah.
sense. So my mind was, my thought process, everything was changing so that these new thoughts mixed with this dream really
Mm,
intertwined into this new perspective, this new mindset. So it really
makes
didn't
sense.
disappear on me at all, this dream.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
Well, and you also mentioned in your questionnaire that we send out that you were moving through this process of leaving a toxic relationship around this time as well. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, definitely
I can
so.
see how that could all tie together.
It was like a completely new beginning in my life.
Yes. Well, that narcissistic wounding so often impacts our ability to trust ourselves. And so sometimes
Exactly.
it can be really helpful to have this feeling, this strong sense from a big dream, as we like to call these types of dreams that stick with you, a strong sense of guidance.
Right.
So I'm so glad that you found that, AJ. I love hearing these types of stories. They instill so much hope in me in a time where things are feeling really hard and really messed up in the United States of America specifically. So,
Oh
yes.
yeah, stay strong, trust me.
Yeah.
Things are chaotic for a reason. There's
Yeah.
always order within chaos. Don't
Hmm.
worry.
Hmm. So I wonder, because now I'm having all of these thoughts and questions about how your psychedelic experiences fell into the context of this dream. I'm wondering quickly, I don't want to forget to ask you about this, because when you were telling the story of the signs and synchronicities that were leading up to this dream for you, you talked about the 333 moment. And it was crazy because as you were describing that story, my third eye went 333 right before you said it. So I think we need to go to 333 for a second. I think we need to talk about that
Oh
for a
yeah.
minute. What is your take on 333, right? Again, in retrospect, how did you sort of, digest or metabolize that number specifically or that experience? What does that mean to you at this point?
Well, I told you back then I had absolutely no idea about anything. It's like who I am today and who I were back then are two completely different people, which I find amazing.
Sure, it is amazing.
It is. So that version of me, I ended up just looking it up because I could feel that it was something.
Yeah.
And all I understood at that point were angel numbers.
Yeah.
That's as far as I got. And what I took was this boy. And what's funny is I didn't mention how the boy,
Mm,
he even connected with me. It was actually his mother. His mother stopped me and asked me about my hair.
yeah.
I answered the question, and then she just completely stopped talking to me. And the boy felt finally that, the opportunity because they had my attention. She just turned her head,
Mm,
and he was like, "Well, now that you're looking at me, let's play this game on the calculator."
mm,
So I did find this strange, and I thought this boy must be something special, but that this other version of me who was just going to work, that really simplistic idea of myself,
yeah.
didn't really care, but that version inside thought, okay, this has to be something. So when I
Yeah.
did learn the number, the word angel number, I thought this boy must be an angel, and that's
Mm,
something that I experienced a lot of strange things like that. Even right now, I still feel sometimes a little uh, awkward talking about or sharing because I
yeah.
never thought I would say the word God and angel so much in my life before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is strange. So I do realize that angel numbers or synchronicities, I do feel that that's God's communication. God doesn't speak with words, he speaks with signs and symbols. So
Mhm, mhm.
as far as I go, I mean, I can probably go on and on sharing strange. I mean, right now there's
Yeah.
this huge moth
Oh.
like this size with stripes and threes on it. There are threes on it,
Oh.
and it's been sitting on my window since yesterday. I don't
Ah.
understand, but I realized that this is just something that I've been really stressed trying to balance, like I mentioned earlier, on these aspects of my world, and I feel like God is just there saying, "I'm here. You're not making this up. You're not. I
Yeah.
understand. I hear you. Everything's fine." I'm not sure if this answered your question, but this is as
Oh,
far as
it
it goes
does.
for
It
me.
does.
Again, there are threes on this moss. Like,
Yeah, just right there. Well, yeah, it makes sense to me that it's a number of encouragement. Speaking personally as someone who is trying to walk a spiritual path that I'm reclaiming from a history of religious trauma. So that's part of my journey. But I think that I need these reminders over and over again, like you were saying, that I'm not making this up, that there is something here, because it's just so tempting for the protective parts of our ego to say, don't
yeah.
hope too much, don't depend too much, don't put too much stock into these things. You're going to get hurt. So I think that we need that encouragement, and we need it over and over and over. And maybe that's
Oh,
why
yeah.
these numbers repeat, is that has a symbolic aspect to it as well, of like, I'll keep
Yeah.
encouraging you forever, like, because you
Yeah.
need
And
it.
actually, since you mentioned the three, sorry, I didn't even think of it that way. I'm so sorry. The
Yeah.
three does have a symbol of just of that spiritual and mental combination of what being human truly is.
Oh,
That's why it's called the third eye. And
yeah.
I mean, it is literally your third eye, but that version of us, we don't tend to listen to very often when we're stuck in this physical aspect of our lives. And when I say
Yes.
physical aspect of our lives, I mean that version has been developed and manipulated through society's
Yeah.
aspect of what we need to be. And that three, I think, is to remind you you're much more than this person. There's
Mm.
more to you. That voice inside your mind is very real. It's relevant, and I think it's to get me to listen. That's around that time I was heavily ignoring, my inner thoughts, my pain, everything that really did challenge where I should be heading towards, rather than just letting my depression and my laziness, my pain take over and allow me to do nothing. I
Mhm.
think that number three was to remind myself this is a part of life that you really do need to take seriously. And this other part, even though society has convinced you that, money and work and, all
Mhm.
these things are very, very important, it's actually not as important as this. And
Yeah.
I do think that hearing, I think it was like three, 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 getting
Yeah,
so
like
many.
so many times. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, please wake up. And
I
I'm
know.
pretty sure that's what that was about.
Like, we're gonna hit you over the head with this. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Spirit has a sense of humor, right? I
Oh
mean,
my
come
goodness, yes. I talk
on.
about this all the time. It has such a sense of humor, sometimes even
Like,
sarcastic.
yes, I was gonna say there's sarcasm, there are puns, like, you name
Yeah.
it.
Hmm.
Spirit is funny.
So funny.
On that note, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Let's transition into talking a little bit about your work and the book. Maybe a window into this could be just a point of curiosity about when, during this trajectory, your first psychedelic experiences kind of came into the picture. And then we can use that to talk more in depth about this book and your work. So if you think that feels like an okay place to go, let's do it.
Yes, completely fine. This all started with my first psychedelic experience, by the way. I
Yeah.
have never tried anything like this before.
Yeah.
There's so many layers to this story.
I'm sure.
So I'm like, I don't even know where to begin because
Sure.
meeting my husband is, I sound very cliche, but I promise you, I really mean it literally. My husband is my soulmate. We
Yes.
have reincarnated, finding each other plenty of times, and psychedelic
Yes.
has allowed us to even witness our past selves. Anywho, it wasn't until I met my husband, who at the time obviously was my boyfriend, and we were both in the same mental space. We were aimless, had no idea what we were doing. We could
Hmm.
still feel something. We could definitely feel something between us. A lot of energy. He barely spoke English.
Hmm.
I don't speak any Spanish,
Hmm.
but we could feel something really, really strong between us. So we were just together because we felt love that we've never even experienced outside of, ourselves before. In my
Yeah.
own personal world, in his personal world, never experienced love. And it just felt very natural. We just went for it. So we were
Yeah.
just years together. And that relationship really had us understand that there are different dimensions to ourselves because we can understand that there are two versions of us mentally and spiritually that are almost magnetic. But these outer versions, these physical selves are really not, we're not clicking because
Sure.
he's dealing with his issues. I'm not understanding. He's not even understanding his own issues. He's just reacting constantly.
Yeah.
I have my own personal issues dealing with narcissists and I don't love myself. He definitely doesn't love himself. And we're just constantly, combating. And we were so curious about understanding how we have this strong connection on two dimensions of self. And this is before we started psychedelics. We can just feel it.
Sure.
And how we have these differences in our physical world. And we're just very curious about understanding more about what being human is. And we just decided to try psychedelics.
Yeah.
I guess because that was our intention, we had an extremely profound experience.
Yeah.
And it went against what a lot of people tend to experience, a lot of colors and shapes and frequencies, things like that, which we did experience, but we were really curious about our human experience. Basically, we're understanding the energy that we were trapped in a human body. That's the first thing we noticed we were.
Yes.
And our understanding of how my heart works and how our hearts seem to be connected, we were understanding so much about what energy actually is, and that being human is just this character that we're playing, and this character has been built by all of our circumstances. And we were thinking, this love that we have is actually more real and profound than what we believe we are.
Sure.
And this is why we feel this connection so strongly. And I guess love was the first point of this psyche journey that we entered, because if it wasn't for him, I don't think I would have gone this far, because I was understanding how to control my inner self. Is a lot of, when you do psychedelic, there is a lot that you must comprehend to stay in control. And it sounds is the opposite of what you should be doing when it comes to psychedelics. You shouldn't be in control of anything. You should let yourself loose.
I see.
But there are two different ideas of what control is, and control over your mind and control over your body are two different, worlds.
That makes sense.
I was trying to take control of my body because I was experiencing this energy leaving my body. And I thought, is this death? Like, what is this experience? I could feel the energy of where I was merging with a frequency that I could physically see it. I could visually see this a line of frequency that was just in my room.
Yeah.
And I was merging with it. And my husband has Asperger's. So he's autistic and doesn't really understand socially how to communicate his thoughts and things like that normally. So in my world, we communicate based off, I just understand him. I guess that's my empathy disorder thing. But on the psychedelics, he tended to be this extremely profound and wise person. It was very different. He was communicating very differently.
Yeah.
And he was explaining to me what this energy is.
On this other plane. Yeah. Different story. Yeah.
Yeah. It was amazing. Completely amazing. And he could see that I was overwhelmed and, trying to control my body. So he decided somehow to telepathically explain to me everything that he was thinking.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
It was incredible. My mind was blown. And he explained to me everything that we were, and he showed me the images he was having in his mind of memories from our past lives together. And we're both I don't know how to explain this better than this, but we were both experiencing we were friends. I think our first relationship, we were two boys, and we were just best friends, lollygagging, enjoying life together. And we had been, I think this might be our fourth relationship together. That it's been a long period of being without each other and reincarnating without each other. And so this time he's explaining to me the purpose and point of our relationship and who he is versus who I am. By the way, I am explaining the other book slowly.
Okay,
I can't help it.
I know. Just a little teaser.
But don't worry, there's more.
A little taste, yeah.
And he's explaining to me the dimensions of who we are, but the highest point of our purpose and where we actually come from, where we stem from. And the reason why, he understands everything about life. When he's sharing everything that he sees, he's basically seeing, and this sounds really far-fetched, but he's sharing the construction of the world, I guess, the construction, like how everything was built. And my mind is blown watching it's just how his mind works. And he's explaining, he sees this the entirety of how humanity works. And on a human level, that allows him really not to understand the social aspect of what we are, which is I think he's explaining the Asperger's part, but he doesn't really understand
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
Like,
There's like a
right.
disconnect. Yes.
hmm And he's explaining everything how it works. He's transferring this knowledge to me. And he's saying, like, you have everything it takes to really understand other people. And you have the empath disorder. You have all these things
Uh-huh.
that will be able to articulate this information for others and for yourself to change. And we had a laugh attack, and that was it. It was over. And that was our first experience. And I couldn't believe that I understood who I was on a deep level. I
Incredible.
understood what life was, how what being human is. It was that just like that. It was
I
all meant to be.
know. And to have that together.
Yeah, exactly. It was really beautiful. A lot of people don't really get to experience psychedelic experiences with others at all because that energy is it's a lot to control.
Sure.
But he did say that we this was has been our journey every time we reincarnate, and it's really difficult
Hmm.
to. I guess it's also because of our avatars, like our
Hmm.
characters. And this is the first time that we've had characters that were so perfectly aligned with the wisdom and how they explain it. And yeah,
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow, wow, wow. Quick clarifying question because I'm curious. In your book, which, by the way, we should say the title of your fabulous book, which is The Beginner's Guide to Ego Death. Obviously, we will link to it as well. But in the book, you outline, these three different psychedelics that you are unpacking in depth and working with: Mama psilocybin, Father LSD, and Grandmother ayahuasca, which I love that characterization of it's sort of like the, nurturing type of energies of each of these substances.
yeah.
So for this experience that you just outlined for us, which one did you choose with your husband? I'm so curious.
This is the psilocybin.
Ah,
Oh,
yes.
I can't believe I didn't mention that. Yeah, this is the psilocybin.
Curious. Yes.
Really, really allowing me to understand who I am from the heart to the mind.
Hmm.
Really, really simple. And I think that the idea of learning who you are from your heart
From the
first,
heart first.
especially in this, environment, this new setting that we
Yeah.
all live by, it's really shocking to understand
Yeah.
yourself on that level. But that was what
Absolutely.
psilocybin did.
But it's such a heart opener, isn't it?
Oh,
And
definitely.
oh, okay. I have two things I want to say about it before we move on. I have to. One is that I have a story about psilocybin, a brief one that involves
Please do.
myself and my husband. And the brief version of it is just that it's so funny because I wasn't taking psilocybin at the time of this encounter, but my husband was. So what happened was this was like early on in our dating relationship. This was back in probably like 2015, 2016. He went on a camping trip with his friends to the forest and they took like a hero's dose of psilocybin, which I don't remember the exact dosage, but it was quite a high dose. And I, back here in Los Angeles in my apartment, just chilling, not on any substances, I had two dreams while he was away. One of my dreams
Mm.
was, yes, a dream of being pregnant. And at the time, I really had not really seen that theme in my dreams before, but I had a dream of being pregnant and it was very powerful. It was very intense. And then I had another dream that same weekend of having a baby girl and holding her in my arms and feeling the emotion of being with her. And it was the most powerful love I had ever felt. And I woke up just crying like tears of joy. And I wrote it all down. And I was just like, man, those dreams were so intense. Wow. I need to like hold on to that. And so then he came back from his trip and we're sitting at dinner and he's telling me all about it. And he shared with me that he had two visions that involved us during that trip. One of which I was pregnant and we were living in Nashville, which is where we live now. At the time, we lived in LA. And then the other one was that we had a baby girl and he was like helping her walk and I was with them. And it was this really sweet little image of all of us together.
So beautiful.
Of course, like he doesn't know that I had dreamed about that. So he's telling me and my
Right.
eyes are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger as he's talking. And he's like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I had two dreams and they were the same thing. And oh my God. And so we had this powerful connection. Even though I was not on any substances, my dreams linked up with what he was being shown, and cut to now we have our daughter Iris together. So yeah, just a little example
And you
of,
said that was back in 2015?
that was, yes, that was like early on
How amazing.
in our dating relationship. Yeah, and I really do think that was a part of this guidance that we were both receiving about the relationship and about the significance of the relationship. Because at the time we were in a tough period. He was going through a divorce, and we were trying to figure out how we were going to move forward and if we were going to move forward. And I think this was just that little nudge from the universe of like, there's something really
Right.
beautiful here. Like, keep going. Yeah. So I just had to share that.
Definitely. I hope you don't mind. That makes me want to share
Yes,
another experience that I had
please.
from ayahuasca, which is
Please.
extremely relevant. It's similar because ayahuasca, right before I decided to do ayahuasca, I had been going through a lot. Every character that was forced into my world to help reflect on myself and to change, I didn't see it. Everyone was an enemy, and
Oh,
it was just a lot going on. So I was really overwhelmed. And my husband said, "Yeah, I think you really need a spiritual journey. I think you need to step outside of yourself and understand something. Something's telling me to tell you we have to move on."
yeah.
It was a lot to do with my parents. I'm thinking, so of course, this other person, this version of me thinks, no, these are my parents. These are important people. I have to fix this relationship. And he's like, yeah, but also how the universe designs these experiences, these stories are not always just, a linear way of thinking. I think that you just need to see this really brighter perspective. So we immediately the next day we just went. I think it's the Amazon rainforest.
Amazing.
I was living in Ecuador at the time, obviously. I met up with a shaman. He had a strange feeling about me as soon as he met me. He was immediately just very, very blessed that I was there. It was very interesting. And there were some people there, but my experience was very calm, and other people were, vomiting and
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
and crying deeply.
Sort of the purge, as you have referred
Very,
to it.
yeah, exactly. But I really want you to understand to go in with the spiritual journey, and you hear other people and their journeys experiencing. It can be distracting, I will say.
Of course.
But what I did experience was really simple. My husband, once again, just experiences the structure of humanity. I don't understand. This is just who he is. He's just standing there, just like, just leaning against the wall, very calm. And the shaman, is like, maybe, are you okay? Like, maybe you should try to purge. And he's like, no, I'm completely fine. He's like, you just took 8 ounces of ayahuasca. Like, shouldn't you? And he's like, no, I'm completely fine. In my own world, I can hear him. I can hear this voice in my mind, it was a little different than that third eye voice that I normally hear. And it's explaining to me that the information that I'm trying to, at the time I was trying to help my friends and family start their own journeys to heal, because I can see that we have issues in our relationship because you have a lot of trauma, and the emotional intelligence, especially in, the Black community, it's very disturbed. And I'm trying to help my family and friends, and it was causing a lot of chaos. And instead of love, and, I even think right now reflecting on it is very heavy for me. So I can hear this voice telling me about time. And this information it needs to flow with the time. And what you're doing is using this present information, and you're pulling it backwards because you're trying to help people who are already, affected by these circumstances. And it's really difficult. It's not your job to really change these people. But if you want to use this information and this wisdom to help anyone, what you need to do is start present and work into the future. You need to have your own children. This is just happening within,
Beautiful.
I'm not coming up with it on my own. And they're explaining to me, actually what I saw was a herd of elephants. And there were about maybe 6 large elephants and two or three baby elephants, and explaining like, this is the type of environment you need to create in order to spread this wisdom. If you raise children this way, and this is the standard and structure of their psyche, rather than trying to, manipulate and rewire these highly disturbed psyches, this would be a better way to be able to spread this information. And because it's not just information, it's their emotional system that really is what's changing society. Anger sort of magnify more anger,
Sure, sure.
and attract anger, and that's just how at least energy works. It
Yeah.
reflects. And I just understood that if you explain this and teach, not just teach, but embody this information to these new beings,
Yeah.
this is exactly how you spread love and wisdom.
Wow.
And that was it. That was that simple. The
Wow.
ayahuasca was a beautiful experience. It was very delicate and lovely. I really, and I didn't experience any of the purging.
Yeah.
Actually, I did, but it wasn't sickening. It's so
Yeah.
strange to really understand. Because if you just watch it, especially sober, I guess, it does look devastating or sickly, but it really isn't that at all. It really
Mm.
does feel beautiful to purge this energy that you experience inside that you don't really understand that you're experiencing these. You're
Hmm.
just walking around as if it's normal. And just to get rid of things that you do naturally accept negativity
Yeah.
throughout your life and to finally just get rid of it is such a beautiful experience.
Mm.
I highly recommend it.
Powerful. So powerful. And I love hearing that you were able to integrate this idea of you're going about trying to be a healing agent in the world in this kind of backwards way. You just need to redirect that energy. That's so powerful. It's so
Definitely.
incredible. Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, okay. I can't believe our hour is already slipping away. I knew it would. I want to talk a little bit more about your fabulous book. Really, one of the things that I was just so taken with about this book, AJ, is that I feel like you just give some really practical guidance and wisdom for, as we've said, choosing a substance based on your intention. So choosing that energy that you're trying to cultivate. There's this whole table that you've outlined that indicates kind of the psychedelic journey navigator, where it has this criteria for what you're looking for, what your intentions are, at sort of like which of the substances would be the best suited. And I think that's just so, I haven't come across that really in my own kind of research. But then you go into these different levels of ego death. And so I think that is the thing.
Yes.
It might be really helpful for listeners to get just, obviously the book goes into it in so much detail, but a bite-sized idea of A, what ego death is, and B, what made you choose to outline ego death on these three separate levels? Please give us a little kind of highlight reel of those concepts.
Well, firstly, it is important to understand what the ego actually is to begin with, but
Yes.
because a lot of people believe that the ego tends to be, it's this sort of attitude, but in reality, it's just your
Yeah.
sense of self, and the sense of
Yeah.
self typically turns into a box mindset.
Right.
And that box mindset is usually we portray it as different characters as we live our lives, and we don't understand or aware of any of this.
It's black or white. It's limiting, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And this sense of self, I think, really limits our idea of how to live our lives, and it
Yes.
entraps us. That's how I was experiencing life before this eco death. I was experiencing whatever my parents taught me I could or should. My emotions have been entrapped by whatever my parents could or said I could or should. And like I said, like attracts like. So now I'm attracting these similar people into my world.
Yes.
My entire reality is becoming shifted into this negative experience. And as I experienced ego death, which was basically understanding myself from different levels and perceptions. And the ego itself believes that this is the one and only way to live life.
Right.
And when you understand other versions of yourself that exist, it's not only just your spirit self, your mental self, your physical self, but this physical self tends to have different characters. And all of it has a lot to do with your circumstances and what you believe in yourself or what you're hiding from yourself, hiding from other people. And you manipulate these versions of yourself until you don't really exactly understand you're being these people. And it does run your life. And unfortunately, that runs your life. That means that's what's keeping you stuck in that box.
Right.
So this ego death is really truly to free your mind and free that energy that flows, allows you to experience what being human truly is. And I think that's the main importance of what I'm trying to share with this book is how to enjoy what being human is.
Yes. In an expansive, transcendent way, not this little narrow, limited box. Yeah.
Right. The book is as simplistic as can be.
Yeah.
And it's simplistic because one, I do think that I was chosen to explain this because there's no other way to explain other than what I've seen.
Yeah.
And what I've seen was a gift from the universe.
Yeah.
And the way I'm explaining it is the difference between, I guess, how I'm explaining what the ego and what the psyche is versus the academic versions, which I've read plenty.
Sure.
It's really difficult for us to understand who we are and how we work academically for the average mind. I think it's really difficult for us to ever evolve or change if we just don't understand who we are and how we operate. That's insane. When you think about we're humans, we have no idea what we are. We have no idea why we are here. And there's so much construction of our society that controls how we think and how we should think, how we should feel, who we should be. And this book is pretty much to unravel and unzip all of that information and kind of replace that information with the reality of what you truly are, how your body really works, how your mind really works, how reality actually works. And all of this, cohesively intertwines into one point of your existence. That's the entire thing. I'm not sure if that sounds complex, but I promise I make it extremely simplistic.
Exactly.
It's very structured and organized to do so.
Yes. That's what I appreciate about it so much is that, of course, these concepts are very challenging to boil down because we're asking our feeble human minds to try to process something that is so much larger and more expansive than what we're used to. But we do have this capability to hold two truths at once, right? Hold our human limitations with our spiritual expansiveness. And so this book really helps us kind of strike that balance. Again, I'm looking at the Two of Swords. I can have one foot in both worlds. In fact, that's a part of why I'm here. So yes, I think that when we're talking about ego death, I do love that you make that distinction of just the ego as our sense of self and the illusion of that, right? I also really appreciated that there was a lot of just careful consideration about how the ego operates in our day-to-day lives and how, from my lens as a psychotherapist, I would say that so often when I'm doing parts work with clients, which is all about integrating the different aspects of ourselves, including the parts of ourselves that are just naturally connected to spirit, right? I would say that often the ego is what we would call like a self-like part. We think that it's ourself. It has this illusion that it's the self, but really it's this idea of who we should be that has been bestowed upon us.
Exactly.
And so we learn to move beyond that, and suddenly there's so much more possibility for us. And I'm also just so excited about the way that our field is going and the way things are moving towards psychedelics becoming legalized for clinical psychotherapeutic work. I just think that that is going to be such a healing chapter for humanity. So very exciting. We can't get there fast enough as far as I'm concerned.
Oh my God.
But it's coming, right?
Oh, and so necessary, and everyone will understand why soon.
I know. So I am so thrilled, AJ, that you wanted to be here and start this conversation with us. I would love to continue it. I think that you are just such a lovely soul, and I'm so glad to have met you. So appreciate you. Thank you for being here.
Oh my goodness, likewise.
Please, anything that you want to leave us with, please share with listeners where they can also follow you and follow your work if they choose to do so. So please feel free.
Well, firstly, thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. And, if you can imagine what it was like in the beginning of this journey, trying to explain this information to people was really difficult. And now I've let it go. And now you guys are coming to me. And it's such a really beautiful experience. Finally, everything is just leveraging, and it's a really beautiful feeling. If you want to learn even more about myself, I have something on my website called thephilosophers.room.com. And I have something called the digital diary, my digital diary.
Beautiful.
And I just explain some details of my personal experience, because this book does explain, it is literally a guide to ego death, how to actually flow your mind and your thought process to lead towards ego death. So I do explain my own personal experiences because I'm probably one of the most relatable people you'll ever meet.
Yes.
So just feel free to learn more about me there.
I love that that can be a companion, right? Like the book is this very detailed how-to guide, but then you've also got your companion personal stories on your digital diary. And I think
Definitely.
that is such a lovely way to lay it out. Great to know, AJ. And I know that you're working on a new book, so we will stay tuned about that because it sounds amazing. Thank you again just for sharing your energy, your beautiful wisdom with us. So, so, so grateful to you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for this episode. Thank you again to my guest, AJ Murillo. May you continue to carry the torch of the introspective detective and to guide others into expansiveness and healing. We'll see you back here next month with another amazing guest. If you want more Psyche Magic, be sure to check out the Psyche Magic Salon on Substack. There you'll find all full and bonus episode archives for the podcast, as well as my weekly written newsletter with magical musings and recommendations for sources of creative inspiration. You'll also find the recorded version of our salon ritual to invoke creative flow. That's psychemagic.substack.com. If you haven't already, please take a moment now to subscribe, rate, and review us on your podcast app of choice. It really makes a difference and helps other people find the show. We hope you'll also follow along with our shenanigans on Instagram and TikTok at Psyche Magic Podcast. Psyche Magic was produced and recorded by me, Jordan Hale. Editing for this episode is by Masuzu Inaga. Our theme music is by Young Summer. Artwork is by Annika Murphy. Special thanks go to Daniel Higbee, Grace Fuse, and Michael McMillan. Thank you so much for listening. I'll leave you with a question. If you must sleep through a third of your life, are you willing to sleep through your dreams too? Get your dream journals out, y'all. Until next time.